Okay. Ready when you are.
Yeah. You join us, Peter? Alright guys, well appreciate those of us that have managed to make it. A few people unfortunately haven't, but hopefully we can just get some consistency to this in-house. We can make sure we get everyone involved and adjust it if we need to. I mean, first off, the main thing I want to achieve from today and going forward on every topic or every time we have a CPD session is that it's not so much me dictating necessarily to you guys, but I actually want us all discussing and engaging, because I found in my old job in the past, like the more you have this stuff and get everyone talking, everyone has stuff, information they can share, everyone has ways of looking at things that can be useful for the rest of us, and it just gets discussion going between us either at these sessions or in between these sessions, whatever it might be. And I think it's really important that we're in an environment where there's consistency across us all, we're learning from each other, there's common language, and if we can work towards that, then I think this is going to be useful endeavour. That kind of makes sense, yeah? So, second point being, don't fucking do that. Like, just say nothing, right? I want it to be a two-way thing. Everything I've got on the board today is just to guide the discussion. So I want it that this is some of my thoughts, it's not everything I can think of, it's a lot. Spent a bit of time over the weekend and last week thinking about sort of different areas of topics, but I don't want it to be that it's just me talking and you lot sit there and say fuck all. Otherwise it'll piss me off. I know, I'm saying, and that's the point, right? You guys need a chance to speak for once as well. So I'll run that in the presentation and I'll take this up yourself and people want to work. So, today we want to look at the squat. So, I think it's an exercise we all know, we all use very, very regularly. And I think it's a good exercise to make sure we start to build some common language and consistency on. So, I've kind of gone through what in my head when I'm coaching people, so what are the global key coaching points that I look at, a little bit of perhaps execution cues or points around those which we can sort of discuss. And I do want to spend some time discussing on this, so whilst I go through what I've got, I think as we go through each one I want to have some feedback from you guys. What do you think? Do you disagree, agree? Am I missing anything? And we can kind of come to a point where we're all kind of in agreement about some key elements. I've got some variable points which link to this, so make if you pick up one of these that's not here, I'll tell you why I think it's a variable point. A little bit around some why we have good techniques we can discuss, and then I've kind of listed a few general errors that I sort of see, some of them interconnect a little bit, and I've kind of got some notes on like what I think are perhaps some cues or ways of developing them, but I also, ideally if we have time at the end, I want to have some time to discuss these, and also talk about what I do, what you guys do around solving these issues, because I think this is where, as a group, we can really work together and help each other. And I say everyone's reading different stuff at different levels and from different resources, so I think this will be an important point. So if we don't get time to do this, I'm happy to continue this element for a whole hour next month or something, which I think will be useful. So I've kind of gone 5 key points, because 5 is a nice number and it keeps it kind of simple for a learning process. So number 1, a rack position. So pretty obvious with that, that's the point of contact with the bar. So when we're expressing force from the ground on the way up, it's connecting it to the bar. That position is really, really important. And if we're making sure that we teach that position from the start to people, and understand why that's important, I think we are starting in a good place. Some elements around that, so we want that rack position to be tight. Key points around that for me is I look at elbows ideally inside the hands. So wherever that grip is, we want the elbows to be inside the hands, so we drive the elbows together, that helps create a sensation of tightness. I mean, if they've got crazy stability where their hands are directly over the elbows, that's probably okay as well, because if you're able to do that, then it's going to be a hell of a tight rack position. So, but in theory, trying to keep the elbows somewhere inside the hands, if you look at them, pulling down on the bar, twisting the bar over your back, I think we're all probably comfortable using that, something along those lines. And then another cue is to try and aim to keep the elbows or drive the elbows under the bar. Okay, so it's not to say that it has to be directly under the bar, but what we are basically trying to avoid is this kind of elbows really, really high. You can see straight away shoulders rolling forward. it's just not going to be optimal. So depending on mobility and what you go around the rack position, the goal is to try and get the elbows on the side view as close to as under the bar as that person can handle. Number 2, torso stability.
What's our view on high bar, low bar and stuff like that?
So to me, that is a variable.
Okay.
So, and it kind of links sort of the torso angle. Well, what do you guys think? Anyone got any thoughts on that straight away, or?
I don't know.
You must have something. Come on, you're like itching to say something. Come on.
I don't teach that. So what did you still go elbows down with low bar?
Yeah, as aimed to. So yeah, it's typically with low bar, you're likely to see a wider position, right? So, but I think you should still try and get the elbows as under. It's more of a general intent. Yeah, I think because again, this is where historically, like low bar guys, they end up putting it so low because they end up resting the bar across their elbows. And it's not to say that people haven't been hugely successful with that. I think it's just that, particularly in like raw powerlifting, as that's starting to become a bigger thing, there's top level people starting to address some of these key points. And you know, when you haven't got a suit that's allowing you to lean really far forward, put your hips right back and stretch it and have the bar even lower on your back, you've got to start. There's only so low a low bar can go before you're going to compromise that position and start not maybe utilising your hips or legs for force production. So the goal is to kind of, so it might, what I'm trying to say is what you don't want to see is this. If you're seeing this, and we've all seen that rounded over, elbows written, that's just not going to be optimal. You've got to have some intent to get the elbows under. It links to a point in that kind of torso stability, which is this intent to kind of drive up into the bar, be it with the shoulders or the traps, or if you're doing a really high bar Olympic style, you might do that and probably press a little bit. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, some Olympic coaches can teach that back and let that kind of drive up into the bar. The goal of that is you're intending to create some upward drive from the whole body, not just from the legs and the shoulder and rack. It's kind of passive along the ride.
What are the advantages of low bar in squat?
I think the low bar is kind of powerful. So essentially, the lower bar position means that there's more contact or surface area in contact with the bar. You're going to bring the torso angle slightly forward, which means that the posterior chain is going to become a slightly bigger factor than it was in a high bar position. So in theory, the idea is you're creating more leverages and more muscles, more joints, acting as unison to drive the bar up. That's kind of why powerlifters typically will optimize a low bar. The key element I would say as well is that they're not necessarily going all the way down to the bottom. And I think you have to remember in a high bar, low bar, which again I think is a bit of sometimes unnecessary description, but if you go, Olympic lifters want as much depth as they can get because they're trying to maximise the space going to the bar. They also use a high bar because they're teaching them to be more upright, which is again important in success in Olympic lifting. Pretty fair, isn't it? Right, I would say. And then in a low bar position, they're only going to just break power, so they don't need quite as much depth. So that can change a little bit. And whereas with a low bar, I'd say, I mean, not saying it's impossible, there isn't anyone else that does it, but I would imagine it's pretty hard to get full depth position in a low bar. I've yet to see someone, I'm not sure I've ever seen them go all the way down. It's not to say it's possible, but like generally speaking, you use a low bar to maximise force production over range. However, there is equally a shitload of Olympic lifters who probably outlift a lot of power lifters doing a full range of motion.
So with the CC9 fundamental sessions, it sounds like just stick with.
I think 99% of what we teach is high bar.
Yeah.
I think it's not relative to CrossFit.
Yeah.
I would use the low bar squat for people who got problem knees, and then if you want to stick with the force, like if you want to still build the leg strength, then if you start using the low bar squat, you take in the stress of the knees.
However, I would say, like, I think remember the low bar, like
the movement pattern will change.
Yeah. The knees still need to be forward though. So what, like?
It's not vertical. It doesn't stay vertical. You will push forward, but because the back angle, you're going to lean slightly forward, and hips come back. Then the more stress will go on your hips than your knees. Where on the high bar squat, you try to stay completely vertical, and through this, you're using more of the quads, creating more stress in your knee too.
And I mean, we went on a course and this guy was talking about this, and the two of us had this whole discussion. This guy, he was a dick when he but like when you historically with like powerlifting, particularly when they were in suits, like a squat suit, right? So shoes would be triple ply and at its height, triple ply suit, trying to maximise the elasticity of that suit. You probably would see this ultra wide, shin really vertical, hips really far back, squat, like low bar squat, because they're trying to maximise the suit, right? They're trying to maximise the suit to assist them at the bottom and take as much work as possible. But even now, the low bar, high bar squat, like in more powerlifting, like you still need to break the knees and hips together. The knees still need to travel forward. But what the point Cameron's making is that if the bar's higher, the torso is more upright, the knees are going to naturally travel within relative to that individual, taking into account information, etc., etc. The knees will travel further forward. Okay, and the torso is going to be more upright. In a low bar, because the bar's lower, to maintain this position over the midfoot, you can move forward a little more. That should cause the knees to come back a little bit. But you still want to use the quads in and out of the bottom of the squat. And we'll get into this in a bit. But that kind of so torso stability within that, for me, that's including like spine, pelvic alignments. So the drive up into the bar, as we mentioned, I think maintaining that position. As you reach the bottom, you want to be really focused on driving up into the bar. Okay, it's a useful cue that I think just as you're sort of coming in at the bottom, your intent already with the upper body driving up into the bar, just as the legs kick in to drive up, and it gives you all of your effort, all of your intent is driving up into the bar. Okay? The reason I put it under the torso stability is I think that a lot of times one element when people don't try and practice this or think about this, and it is quite a hard skill to practice. You can sometimes see deviation in the spine or pelvic, or it adds to it. Another big element to this, and probably the biggest one, is setting a breath and bracing, and contracting the torso. So this was a big game changer for me. Like, I used to think that I was what bracing was. There's so many people out there. There's some good recent resources online. There's some, if you get any books by Stuart Gill, he's been researching it for 30, 40 years, this old Canadian dude. And he probably made it more famous in modern S&C term bracing. But it's basically essentially creating intra-abdominal pressure. And because of the breathing and this concept of using the diaphragm and breathing into the belly, what you tend to have for a few years, particularly in powerlifting, is with the belt on, launching everything forward into the belly and creating like an arch in the back. And that's kind of not what you want. When you breathe and set brace, it should be the whole torso. So if you're wearing a belt, you know, we all lift with a belt, you try and fill the whole belt right front to back. That's what you're trying to do. And you should, for me, I think that's a useful thing to practice with and without a belt. And I think if you're good with it, good doing that without a belt, and you utilise the belt, it's going to maximise your torso stability. But that's another big key point. And again, we can come back and discuss what we just learned in there, but I think it's probably useful to go through each one. So core stability number 3 for me is massive. So setting foot pressure in the whole foot. You can say whole foot, you can say mid pressure in the middle of your foot, you can say big toe, little toe, heel. There's some other people that say rooting, which I use sometimes with people where you thought just trying to lift the toes up and spread the toes out. But you're always trying to make sure that the pressure is in the whole foot, from front to back, side to side. Okay. What we used to have, I remember back 10 years, maybe 8 years ago, when we had this whole like hips back because of geared powerlifting suits and cues started ingraining into general training. We did it at Saints for a while, like hips back, and you put the weights in the heel. I can remember a guy teaching me, talking about squat in the workshop, and saying I used to hit the bottom position, you should have lifted toes off before June. We used to do that all the time. Remember that sort of cueing? Like, yeah, it was like they used to teach it like not even that long ago, probably like 5 or 6 years. Still, okay, that's concerned, isn't it? We're definitely doing that. So, but like, I think like again, more good coaches are coming out there. The prevents the internet from Olympic lifting through the powerlifting. I think there's enough stuff coming out there. There's research going on. There's good coaches releasing good information texts that are indicating that this is really important. And it comes around. I mean, all these things kind of interlink, but it comes back to if you're pressurized through your whole foot, your balance is set through the midfoot. Your balance is set through the whole lift. Is more balanced. We're not shifting front to back, and it's the foot at the end of the day, the foot stability. It's similar to the rack position point I made, is the foot is the point of contact with the floor. I think we can all agree that, and that is where we are expressing force down into the floor. The floor isn't going to move, so we're going to move because at the end of the day we're not going to move the earth beneath us, so as we drive down, that produces force, that's how we stand up, okay? We need to make sure that we're looking at flexibility for me, with everyone, and we're making people think about that when we're coaching as well. A couple of points around that, as I said, whole foot pressure, screw the feet into the ground, we can come back to it and discuss any more. Those are just some basic ones that I've consistently used over the years.
So if we're trying to create consistency here,
Yeah.
we are, so the members, is there, you know, all those things you said basically mean the same thing. You know, you can say the 3 points of contact, spread of the toe. Like, is there one that you want us to generally run with? Like, or is there one you feel we should generally run with? Rather than, because if we all tell members different ones, they're going to take something different from that. Whereas if we're all always saying,
Yeah,
3 points of contact.
it's a hard one for me because I think, like, if I was to pick one, I'd say, think about telling pressure off to the whole foot, right?
Yeah.
I think that's quite general. But the thing about, so some people I'll talk about putting pressure in their big toe, little toe, and heel, and I explain that. But I've had people, I found some people who perhaps, like, give you an example, like where you get the foot arch collapsing, right? And they've got that inward rolling foot, and you see the ankle kind of collapsing in as well, and they've just got nothing in their foot arch. And you can say whole foot, 3 points of big toe, little toe, heel, where they feel what, and their foot arch still collapsing. With those people, I start to cue a little differently, and I'll do work where maybe it's a step up to barefoot, maybe it's squat on barefoot. I teach them about lifting the toes, rooting, like spreading the toes.
Yeah,
like
but
fist.
now we're talking about more on the classics. Like this is specific.
Yeah,
an
so that's
example.
a very good point.
That's
Yeah.
about now.
I guess
Right now we're talking about 99% of people who the arch doesn't collapse.
So
which one?
Which John takes fundamentals, and he's
Yeah.
got 5 people who've never done a squat before. What's his cue? What's he going to go with?
Whole foot.
I would say
Whole
whole
foot.
foot, big toe, little toe.
Yeah.
Whole foot.
Whole foot.
But I often, for me personally, I always say whole foot, big toe, little toe, heel. So I feel that's the same thing. Like I feel that explains.
But I think the whole.
If you say whole foot,
I disagree.
you say whole
If
foot,
you
to
say
someone, and
to
they
me-
say, "What do you mean whole foot?" What are you going to say? My question to you.
I don't
And
think
you
there's
go-
many people that don't know what their whole foot is.
Yeah, but I think as soon as we say whole foot, people would not think about driving the toes to the floor.
Yeah.
And I think like people, I think people would go. I think plenty of people go. What do you mean? What do you mean whole foot? And you, to me and you, it makes sense. But like, what if somebody needs a better description than that? Like,
I would say big toe, little toe, and a heel because they at least they start thinking about the toes.
People understand the triangle, I think.
Yeah.
And kind of go,
Yeah.
okay, that's.
And then you can always show them like go because we, in a way, you have to say the same or that you want the same thing.
yeah, and even when you're doing wall balls and stuff, I think the same thing applies. So
Well, it's well, we can't end up with 2 seconds to sometimes when they're not the wrong time to cue someone. It's good to have something quick and easy just to tell them.
So what do you mean then? A whole foot or big foot, big toe?
Also 3 points contact.
3 points contact.
Yeah. Yeah, if you notice someone's rocking backwards or forwards, then you just give them that.
However, I would also stress, like, I'm not gonna, I don't think it's going to if somebody decides to go whole foot, so saying that, like, and then someone from across the room goes, hey, you ain't to say that, like, you know, I think you've also got to have an element of, like,
If anyone says it, then they get a stick broken.
You know, and if I say something about routing, I don't want someone to throw something at me. I
Yeah,
keep them netball in the back of the head or something. But, do you just want to put 3 points of contact, or do you want to say big toe, little toe, heel?
You
You happy with what
can
that means?
put that in brackets so people know what those 3 points are, so they know it's not heel, shin, and elbow.
The parties.
Yeah, neatly. But happy with those. I mean, again, I'm not trying to teach us to suck it. I want us to think we're happy with improvement with kind of key points, right? Simple, yeah. So, big one for me, and certainly I know it's important to Cammy because I was there when we had to have an arm and about it. But breaking the knees and hips simultaneously, and I think this taps into what we're saying this goes to you, John. This idea of like, at one point, I remember we were all being taught like, say, heels back, toes in the floor, like hips back, hips back, hips back, weight in the heels. And that, to me, as far as I understand it, came from like West Side, triple ply power thing, wearing a squat suit when you're trying to stretch that fabric happening, right? And then that meant the bar being around the back and had to move forward more and all this stuff would change. But I think that's where that has come from, and I think it's been me personally, there's research on this, that actually simultaneous break on the knees and hips is when you're without squats you're on, so raw paddock and just squatting generally, it is what's really important. Okay, so what we don't want someone doing is breaking the hips first, or the knees first only. It throws off the whole rhythm, balance of the movement. And I think the other big reason for this being important to me is that we're optimizing all of our muscles and joints effectively. So our hips,
And then turn on at the same time.
yeah, and our hips are working equally with our quads. And I also think that even in a whole squat, there's going to be a point where the quads are more dominant than the hips, and then the hips take over. But if you're not breaking simultaneously, you're not going to allow that to happen. So by that I mean, for example, as we stand up at the bottom of the squat, from the whole parallel with the other, our quads are doing a lot of work, and they're really important. They're going to need, it's not to say the hips aren't, but the quads are dominating a lot of the work at that point. Then as you start to break over parallel, the hips that are back really kick in their work, and they help us lock out and finish the exercise. I think if you're not simultaneously breaking knees and hips, you're losing that opportunity for those to do their correct job. The other big reason that this is important is it links to point number 5, is that we want to maintain a nice bar path and balance. Because squatting essentially, like most lifting skills, is some form of a balance skill. Okay, so we need to be balanced. We want to minimise how much the bar from the midline from the side travels front to back. Okay, so making sure that we initiate this, and we see that in people, and it can be subtle. Sometimes, like you think someone's doing it, and you watch back a video, and you do see a slight initiation of the hips first. What that means is that their rhythm of their descent, so that their tempo of descent is going to be off, because if they think they go hips first and then at some point they have to correct that, it kind of looks a little jolty, it doesn't look smooth, okay? And you often see when people break hips first, there's like a real sudden jerking and rocking of the hips. Another point that links to this, it kind of comes back to here a little bit. If they break the hips first, what often accompanies that is an excessive arch of the lower back, which at some point is going to have to straighten out, or maybe it won't, and then we have more problems. But trying to cue that we say to people to break the hips and knees simultaneously, okay? I also think it links into foot stability, because if we're saying foot stability, you want the pressure and improvement of contact, and our balance then will be in the middle of our foot with this, so those 2 points of pressure are maintained, and our balance is over the middle of our foot. If we make sure we maintain this, we're going to keep the balance over there, and it leads to a nice bar path and the system balance. So system, by system I'm referring to lifter and bar, yeah, so our system balance is maintained. With bar path, system balance, we're driving through the midfoot, the pressure's on our toes and heels, covered earlier, and we're aiming to keep our knees, a big point with this bar path as we ascend, is we aim to keep our knees in the most forward position as you start ascent. So that, the reason I say most forward position is kind of to Cam's point when he was saying to you earlier, John, is if we're coming out the bottom, wherever the knees end up, so if we're in a low bar, they might not be as forward. Or for me, if you've got ankle restrictions, perhaps you've got a very, very long femur, so your hips are further back. Like, everyone's going to look a little different, and this is probably something to take away from today, is that everyone's within these 5 points, everyone's going to look a little different. But wherever the most forward position of their knee as they come out of the bottom, as they stand up, that needs to maintain. So we don't want to see that knee shift back, because then the hip shift back, moving forward, the bar path is off, that midline, as you look from the side. And it's not to say that the bar path has to be exactly straight. There is some level of movement that you could probably accept, but it needs to stay relatively over the midfoot as much as possible, okay? Because it's optimizing force production, it's optimizing our technique, our movement.
And I was going to go back to the knees and the hips. Sometimes you got people who think they do it, they break at the same time, but normally most of them are pushing the knees forward first, and they think they're going down with the hips. Then when the hips and knees are breaking at the same time, then the hips are going slightly back and down and knees going forward. Then you shouldn't be as soon as you say to them stay as vertical as possible, they packing the pelvis in and they do this. And then that's not at the same time. It is the same time, but they're pushing their hips forward, where the hips should be going slightly back at the same time. Then don't be scared to say you actually have to push your hips back slightly, because people then just start getting all the weight.
They're breaking at the same time, but their line's just off.
Yes, they basically go jack through with the knees, their hips are not moving, and because you say, stay vertical, move at the same time, and they basically going from back, they're going completely opposite way, they're just pushing through the hips and knees, where they don't put any pressure on the hips.
Yeah, I actually think that's tapping into I think I've got a point somewhere in there, in my self-thought that as well, in the Fox, and I think it's tapping into a really important point actually, is that, that's knees and hips. I've had people say to you where they go knees first, and then on those people you're cueing hips back, and then you get people who are hips first and you cue knees forward. Another good cue to help with that either way as well is combine it with this focus on the foot, the 3 points. I say squat down into the middle of your foot. If you're addressing this, it will help you with that issue as well, and this is where everything kind of links together a little bit, because if they're going knees first, you can ask that person, and I said, where do you feel the pressure in your foot? Oh, it's on my toes. Okay, well, we talked about this. Okay, or they go hips first, ask them where they feel the pressure. But guarantee if they're thinking about it, some people can't, and that's fair enough, but they should be feeling it more in their heels, right? And again, emphasize this point, right? So this point is going to help you with that cue with Cami, but I think it is important because maybe you just need to select the cue for that person. You've got to be able in a class quickly identify, especially if it's in a CrossFit class, you just want to be able to go up to someone and say, try pushing your hips back first. And trust that if they're already going knees dominant, which is a point you're making, trust that if you just say hips back, you're not going to create the other end of the problem. And if they're very hip dominant and you say to them, I want you to break the knees first, I'm not saying it wouldn't happen, but trust that it's probably just going to be perfect because they already know how to break their hips. So in theory, if you add in knee focus, it should hopefully clean up the movement a little bit. Are we happy on that for now? I think it's not something that we can't come back to down the line. As I say, I want to just start the discussion, which is important. I think variable points. So we said about position, about stance position. So for me, the reason I've done this is these are kind of mainstays. I think that's what I think you want to look for. And we're talking about back squat mostly here, but apart from a couple of changes, I think that applies to low bar, front squat, whatever. Variable points for me is stance position, depth, position on the back, and torso, and that kind of links to torso. So stance position, I think most of us have kind of come to grips now with, or have seen that everyone squats a little differently, generally speaking, right? So some people benefit more from a wider, feet turned out, wider, feet more straight ahead, narrow, feet more straight, narrow, feet turned out. But I think we could spend a whole hour talking about the elements around that, and maybe we can come back to sharing ideas of how we address that with people. But I think for me, what I want to try and get across to you is that, and hopefully we're already not doing this across the board, is that we don't want to be saying there's one optimal stance. And the reason I say that is because, let alone hip mobility, injury restrictions, so let's say the ankles are tight, right? Well, that's going to definitely affect stance. Because if the knee can't travel forward as much, we're going to have to think about possibly external rotation, just literally come off the top of the head here, so that we can utilise movement laterally a bit more, because they can't maintain as much forward travel. Okay? We may have to, with someone with ankle tights, pop someone under their feet, right? Short term, long term, we'll be squatting with a lift under our heel only, so you might want to say to them about getting some lifters as well. But again, that will create some artificial ankle mobility, which will improve things. Plus, you've got structure of the hip, so where the femur kind of sits on the hip socket, and we haven't got X-ray vision, right? We haven't got a way of going identifying this. And as I said, you could do a whole hour on this stuff in itself. What I try and say for you guys, particularly in a session, is just ask somebody, rather than putting someone aside and doing hip mobility tests, and you could do some quadruped squatting drills and things. can also just ask them to play around with their stance, right? And ask them to go a little wider, turn down. Ask them how it feels. Often if they say to you that when they're squatting they feel like a pinching or a straining on their groin or a pinching in their hips or just doesn't feel comfortable, they feel like they get blocked when they hit the bottom position. Like these are cues to you that you can ask them how it feels. They might reply this, it gives you an indication of that something isn't right in their stance. Let alone you're probably already seeing something that you're not liking about the squat. Like, we can all look at it and go, something isn't right about that. We can look at some of these squats as well and go, that looks nice and smooth. But playing around with stance position, and I think that for me is important that I've done it with people in screenings, in classes where I try to say to them, let's just play around a little bit, lighten the load, obviously, so they can make sure that they're changing something drastic like that. You might need to lighten the load. Experiment, ask them to ask how it feels. Are they maintaining? Is it help them maintain these points? You know, often, for example, people go too wide, for example, and then you start to see that their foot's collapsing inwards and they're not maintaining pressure in their little toe, right? And the knees will then follow inwards with that, and you're thinking, ah, crap, they've got knee valgus, something's wrong with their hip. And 9 times out of 10, it's like, well, their foot pressure's off, right? They've lost this key point here. And I'm thinking about whatever's going on with their hips, but first off, is that right and is their stance optimal for them? And if you clean that up within the movement, we can start to improve a little bit, hopefully their squat mechanics. Other variable points for me, is everyone happy? What are thoughts on stance?
Right, so all I'm thinking is like fundamental section, you might have like 3 or 4 people in there who haven't squatted before. And you need to give a guidance then on
a general reference point,
which I normally go sort of at least, you know, kind of like shoulder squats, give you the space to...
I'm set. So my general, I mean, I've used it for years, it works, and it's from the UKSCA, it's what they've always taught, is you go shoulder width apart, roughly shoulder width apart, and then feet turned out slightly. So I'll say to people, imagine cock face on the floor, 11 and 1, squat times always 5 to 1, right? Yeah, so that's a good reference point,
That, and then just say that if you,
and immediately you watch them do something and make adjustments in there. Now, a lot of people, that's ideal with stance position, partly because they're probably not technically proficient enough yet to even know what, even be able to express in their optimal stance position. They're not strong enough. And that might change, you're stronger, but in fundamentals, you want to give people a general reference point, and that's exactly what I would say. And then maybe try and, you as a coach, try and get round and say, or look at them and maybe make some adjustments. And the more you think about this stuff, the more you're aware of this stuff, the more you'll start to see, the more people you see, the more problems you solve. It all pieces together in your head, and the next time you see that issue, you'll experiment a little bit with that. Depth, another variable point, and this is something that bugs me, particularly in like